What's up, everybody? The time has finally come. The vinyl reissue of Celestial Clockwork is now pre-ordering. It is double vinyl. Each piece of vinyl is a different color. So one gold, one is green. It also includes an additional song. The song Say the Word that a lot of you have been asking me for. So I put it on this piece of vinyl as a special edition. The song was only in small circulation of one of the original releases of Celestial when it went out to retail. So that is available on there. It's only 300 copies available. So get yours while they last. You can get it at illogic.bandcamp.com. And I look forward to you guys checking it out. It's gonna be really nice, and you know, it's something special, you know what I'm saying, for this classic piece of hip hop history. So don't miss out. It's only 300 copies. Get yours at illogic.bandcamp.com. Peace. What up, people? What up? What up? What up? Beats and B-sides, we are here. It is another beautiful day here in Columbus, Ohio. Thank everybody for joining me. What's up, Chad? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? So, yeah, today, we are taking a deep dive into Hollow Shell, Cash Clutch. It's one of my favorite joints on the record. And as you can see, I'm starting out a little different. I want to explain the song a little bit before I get into the lyrics. So Hollow Shell is kind of my version of I Used to Love Her in a way. You know, in the song, I kind of put myself in the story about, you know, what hip hop has become, you know, at the time, what I believe hip hop has become, and what I think the purest form of hip hop is. So first verse is really more about what I believe hip hop has become, and the second verse is more about what I believe hip hop is. And but I'm speaking as if I am, you know,
hip hop itself. This is more of, an ode to Common, an ode to that idea, and just kind of doing it my own way. There has been a lot of songs that have, kind of taken that idea and ran with it. And this one is kind of my, quasi ode to that song. I'm kind of putting myself into the body, if you say, of hip hop, and kind of giving you my take on where it is, at least where it was at the time. And a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this song, I believe, are still relevant to this day. A lot of things that I talk about in this song, I believe, are still part of hip hop, and that I believe are still some of the right ways to go about being a hip hop, being part of this thing we call hip hop. And let's see, do you believe the personification of hip hop will ever get overplayed? Not really, because I believe that as society develops and as hip hop continues to go, I think that the idea of what people look at it as changes. So I believe that people will always give you their perspective on what hip hop is, and the personification of it is a great way to do that. And of course, Common was really the first one to do that in the way that he did. But I believe that all artists kind of have their idea of, if I was hip hop, what would I do? How would I interact? And so to answer your question, no, I don't think it'll really be overplayed. Now, it's all about the creativity and how you do it, because I don't think anybody really understood or really knew that this was kind of that. I think people saw this more as a story of, me kind of being in that place, kind of choosing good or evil, and that's kind of what it is as well. But personifying hip hop, personifying anything, it all depends on how you do it and who does it, and if it's well done and well thought out. And I believe that, this song in particular, I enjoyed writing it, and even listening to it and going over it and studying it for this. I believe that, going back through it, it still holds up. It still holds water. So yeah, like in the development of this album, and I've talked about this before, I was really on a tear against what I believe to be bad hip hop, good hip hop, real hip hop, quote unquote. And this was the young underground mind, because, when we were coming up, as I've said before, underground hip hop was kind of viewed as the redheaded stepchild of this culture. Even though, most hip hop started as an underground, music genre in the first place. And what up, Matt? Appreciate it. So, I just wanted to kind of put my spin on it and give my thoughts about, where I thought hip hop was and where I thought it should be. And this is how, I chose to do it. And, I believe it came out pretty dope. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, let's jump into this. I'm not going to be in front of y'all long. Most of this song is pretty self-explanatory, I believe. But I do want to kind of explain some thought process behind, some of the things that I was talking about and referencing in the song. So let's do it how we always do it. Get it started with the lyrics. All right, so we're going to start out with verse 1. I'm stuck in an emotional valley with melancholy, wandering this wilderness with Gilgamesh, bearing a basket of berries rotted to the pits, hobbling through stretches of sand dunes, stand consumed by a walking stick, surrounded by a desert of waste, searching for some clear liquid to mirage the dirt taste. I'm too overwhelmed to control the helm. As the sun smiles, I battle to no time, I'm using my shadow as a sundial. I don't hold the energy to run around. It was lost in those 7 ditches where I scattered my baby pictures in order to leave a small trace of face and for predecessors to know that illogic once held rank in this place. I await to be devoured by the beast of the industry, where the goddess of lust speaks sweet nothings tempting me, where identity crisis is the norm, and where we only know ourselves on stage, but we forget after we perform, where blunted smoke screens cloak the inner discontent, where compensation for your due payments are overspent, where image is everything, and your thirst no longer matters, where we can't stand our true self, so mirror images shatter, where life's no longer a blessing but a curse, and where hip-hop music is no longer fun but work, where life becomes a dream and reality doesn't exist, and surrealism is the poison that you clutch in each fist. All right, so that is the first verse of Hollow Shell. Now, let's, start to break it down. And again, I think a lot of this is self-explanatory, but, I do want to kind of talk about my mindset and the ideas behind a lot of the lyrics. So I'm stuck in an emotional valley with melancholy, wandering this wilderness with Gilgamesh, bearing a basket of berries rotted to the pits, hobbling through stretches of sand dunes, stand consumed by a walking stick. So these first 4 bars, I'm kind of setting the tone, setting the scene. I'm stuck in an emotional valley with melancholy. So going back and forth, and a lot of this, even though I'm, in a way personifying hip hop, it's not completely. I kind of, interject myself into a lot of this as well. But, I'm talking about my own personal struggles at the time with, going back and forth with what, and it's like a double entendre, really, going back and forth with what I was going through personally, stuck in an emotional valley with melancholy, and also what I believe that hip hop was going through at the time, because you got to remember that, in the times of me writing this, I wrote this around 2000-ish, and this is when it seemed like hip hop kind of had an identity crisis. You know what I mean? Where it was lyrical MCs, it was, the flashy suits, it was, gangster rap, it was a lot of things, and there was no, which I think there was no pinpointed idea and pinpointed, thought process of what hip hop actually was and how it should be presented to the world. And, as I've grown, I believe that this is part of the beauty of hip hop as well, is that you can go off on so many, the tree is so huge, what I'm saying? There's so many branches, and then there's branches that branch off of those branches, and branches that branch off of those branches, and, so on and so forth. You have horrorcore, you have, emo, quote unquote, hip hop, you have gangster rap, you have trap music, you have drill now, you have all of these like different, branches that hip hop has branched off in. At the time of me writing this and the time of me being involved in the culture, I felt that there was only one way. You know what I mean? And as I've gotten older and as I've grown, I realized that, the beauty of our art is that there can be so many different variations of what it is. Just like, production, there is so many different variations of how you can make music, just like with poetry, just like with anything, with actual paintings. There's so many variations of things that you can do. So many people have painted, a flower or a garden or a rose, but nobody does it quite exactly the same. There's so many different ways. You can do it as a cubist, you can do it, as an impressionist, you can do it you can do it, take a photograph. There's so many different ways to express art. And I was very closed-minded, which a lot of us were at the time, earlier in our hip-hop careers and earlier in hip-hop in general. We were all kind of closed-minded. A lot of the earlier hip-hop that, I used to love, the De La Souls and the Tribe Called Quest and, Organized Confusion, was all, had their nose up and looking down on R&B. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was on some, fuck R&B because that's whack and soft and this and that. But now You know, in hip hop music today, you can't tell the difference. You know what I mean? R&B today is a version of hip hop, you know, and a lot of the hip hop artists today, quote unquote, utilize R&B chords, utilize R&B, you know, ways of presenting the music, and it's considered hip hop, and now it's blended together. And even, you know, some of those groups that were dissing R&B, you know, have R&B hooks on their songs, and, you know, this and that. So everything evolves, and I believe that I've evolved in this time, you know, with my stance on where I think, you know, hip hop is, and, you know, understanding and appreciating the fact that there's so many different ways that hip hop can be presented. So I'm stuck between Emotional Valley with Melancholy, wandering this wilderness with Gilgamesh. I don't know if anybody out there has ever read Gilgamesh. I don't know if anybody has ever read the epic of Gilgamesh, the story of Gilgamesh, but Gilgamesh was a mythological hero, and he was a king who was, you know, kind of had superhuman strength. He was, I believe he was like 2 parts God and 1 part human, and he was always on this trek, you know, to become immortal. Even though he was 2/3 God, the human portion of him was not immortal. So in that sense, he could die. And I just utilized Gilgamesh in this part, you know, wandering this wilderness with Gilgamesh. It's like and he was always on this journey to become immortal. And as an MC, and as, you know, hip hop itself, you know, I believe that hip hop will be immortal because it's, you know, it'll be around forever, especially now. But, you know, as an MC, I strive to have that immortality as well. And I believe that once you record yourself on record, once you put something out into the atmosphere and into the world, even if 20 people, you know, dig it, to those 20 people, you'll always be immortal. You know what I'm saying? You'll always live. If they pass those songs down, you know, or pass them to a friend, or, you know, like, there'll always be a way for someone to discover your music, as long as, you know, digital and physical copies of things are available. So that's the reason that I used Gilgamesh as, you know, the partner in this journey of hip hop and of me as an MC. So wandering this wilderness with Gilgamesh, bearing a basket of berries, rotted to the pits, hobbling through stretches of sand dunes, stand consumed by a walking stick. So on this journey, you know, I'm carrying, as hip hop, I'm carrying all of this art. And in the first verse, like I said, I'm kind of talking about where I believe hip hop is at the time. You know, carrying a basket of berries rotted to the pits, like, fruit is something that is nourishing to your body, and it's something that, you know, if you eat enough of it, you can't eat too much because of the sugars and all that. But if you eat enough of it, fruits and vegetables, most people believe that eating fruits and vegetables and kind of shying away from meat is more healthy for your body. So but when fruit gets rotten, it's inedible. It doesn't edify your body. It doesn't help you. It doesn't, you know, it isn't something that you need, you know what I'm saying, in order to survive. It's something that can harm you, actually. So that's why I kind of use that literary tool. And so, bearing a basket of berries, rotted to the pits, hobbling through stretches of sand dunes, stand consumed by a walking stick. Basically saying that, you know, at this time, I believe that hip hop was barely standing, that hip hop was on its way, if it wasn't, you know, harnessed, to be kind of crippled and hobbled, you know. So needing that walking stick, stand consumed by a walking stick, honestly, something that you can lean on, a crutch to lean on, surrounded by a desert of waste, searching for some clear liquid to mirage the dirt taste. I'm too overwhelmed to control the helm. As the sun smiles, I battle to no time. I'm using my shadow as a sundial. That's always been one of my favorite lines, by the way. But, you know, again, just setting the scene for this desolate land, you know, it's so bleak. You know, looking back on this, when I was going through this, I was realizing that at the time I was looking at hip hop as this like dark, bleak thing that was, on its way to its own destruction if we didn't change, and, I still believe that I still believe that in a sense. I still believe that hip hop is super powerful in the way that it's being used. It's very detrimental to society, very detrimental to, children that listen to it, all of that, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to read some of these comments too. And, but back then everything was just so bleak, you know what I mean? So, saying that I'm out here in this desert, basically hip hop is in this desert and kind of looking for something fresh, looking for something to edify it, to get this dirt taste out of its mouth, because at this time I'm believing that hip hop is, at least in this verse, is dirty and it's not, where it should be, you know what I mean? So I'm too overwhelmed to control the helm as the sun smiles. I'm battled in no time. I'm using my shadow as a sundial. I don't hold the energy to run around. It was lost in those 7 ditches where I scattered my baby pitches. So this is basically talking about, hip hop kind of losing itself in this desert. You know what I'm saying? Scattered my baby pitches, just talking about how hip hop started and where it came from and the birth of hip hop, how pure it was in the beginning. And the thing is, the thing I discovered when I was going back through this and, kind of getting prepared, hip hop has always had its share of those that were not considered real hip hop artists. You had Sugar Hill Gang was considered, the cotton candy of hip hop. It wasn't the jawbreaker. It was, the fluffy shit that was palatable for society at the time. And a lot of record companies didn't believe that society was ready for the rawness of what hip hop had to bring. So Sugar Hill Gang was the first to be presented to the world as something that was palatable for them. And so, lost in those 7 ditches where I scattered my baby pitches. Now, the number 7 is a number of, it's as far as religion, it's a number of, purity and, I lost my train of thought, but the number 7 is, I utilize that number 7 to show the purity of the past, the purity of, what hip hop was born as. So that's what the baby pictures symbolizes. So lost in those 7 ditches where I scattered my baby pictures in order to leave a small trace of face and for predecessors to know that illogic once held rank in this place. Now, predecessors are those that came before us, preceding. And, for me, I'm kind of injecting myself into here. For me, it's always been more important for those that I considered the pioneers, that I considered the godfathers of this, one day to know my name. One of the coolest things, I always thought one of the coolest things was, when LL Cool J knew who A$AP Rock was. That's the kind of shit that I'm talking about. And, just having that. And, for me, one of my greatest moments was being able to become friends with Abstract Rude, who was one of my favorite MCs when I was in high school, not knowing that we were so close in age, but one of my favorite MCs in high school, and actually becoming friends with him and actually being able to get him on the Capture the Sun record. And, to this day, we still have a cool relationship. And as well as AC Alone is one of those guys that, I've had the privilege of meeting and talking to, and when I met him, he knew my name, he knew who I was. And that's what I'm talking about here. Scattered my baby pictures in order to leave a small trace of face, just leaving a small trace, that immortality thing that I'm talking about, but wanting the people that came before me to know that I did well. You know what I'm saying? That I took this art that they influenced me with, and I created my own thing, and it was something that hopefully they could be proud of, So that's where I'm at with that. Once hell rank in this place, I await to be devoured. Now, this is where I get into where I think hip hop is, and and why I think it's in such a dark place. This is what I believe that hip hop was presented as. This whole section that I'm about to read. This is what I believed hip hop was presented as at the time, that this song was written. So, I await to be devoured by the beast of the industry, where the goddess of lust speaks sweet nothings tempting me, where identity crisis is the norm, and where we only know ourselves on stage, but we forget after we perform, where blunted smoke screens cloak the inner discontent, where compensation for your due payments are overspent, where image is everything and your thirst no longer matters, where we can't stand our true selves so mirror images shatter, where life's no longer a blessing but a curse, and where hip-hop music is no longer fun but work, where life becomes a dream and reality doesn't exist, and surrealism is the poison that you clutch in each fist. So in this whole section, I'm kind of talking about how, because a lot of these things I kind of experienced, this is kind of the dark side of hip hop, and I kind of experienced them on, the level that I was at. I kind of experienced them. And, the goddess of lust speaks sweet nothings tempting me, groupies, and even, the lust of money, all of that, like I await to be devoured by the beast of the industry, because the industry is a beast. It's not for the lighthearted. It's not for the people that aren't prepared, to deal with some struggle, to deal with some shadiness, to deal with, the craziness of the industry. Some people go crazy. Some people have breakdowns dealing with the music industry. So I await to be devoured by the beast of the industry, where the goddess of lust speaks sweet nothings tempting me, where identity crisis is the norm. At this time in hip hop, there was a lot of cats that we knew were just telling a story. We knew they were just playing a character. And, to us, it was like, be real. Talk about the things that you actually go through, the life you actually live. Like, that's what we were doing. So, and, that's what we felt should be done. You know what I mean? And again, very close-minded as youth, but also really hip hop to the core. You know what I'm saying? Like, we understood what hip hop was developed as, and as well as, we wanted this to continue. We wanted the purity of hip hop to continue. So where identity crisis is the norm, and where we only know ourselves on stage, but we forget after we perform, where blunted smoke screens cloak the inner discontent. That was me. Like, again, we've talked about how I had, major depression issues in the time of writing this record, how I had, issues with drugs and, pills and getting high just to, shield myself from the depression that I was feeling. So I did experience this, but this is also something that was presented in hip hop, because I've never done a weed song. You know what I'm saying? I've never presented, not saying there's anything wrong with weed songs. Like, some of my favorite songs are weed songs. You know what I mean? Superman Lover, and, some of How High, some of my favorite songs, Smart Madism, some of my favorite songs are weed songs, but I've never done that because I've never thought that it was something to be praised. I always looked at weed at the time as medicine. And to this day, I still do look at it as medicine, but I was utilizing it more as an escape than as medicine. And that was the main issue that I was running into. So this is what I saw hip hop as. And I saw that the drugs, and back then it was just weed and alcohol. Now, they talk about all kind of drugs in hip hop, and it's really gotten out of hand. And it's very, that's why I say a lot of this stuff is still applying to this day. So was blunted smoke screens cloaked in a discontent, where compensation for your due payments are overspent. Excuse me. Where image is everything and your thirst no longer matters. Where image is everything and your thirst no longer matters. Basically just how you look. This is pre-social media that I'm talking about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, now, image is definitely everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous how Instagram has created this world where we can present ourselves to be something, again, like identity crisis is the norm. We can present ourselves to be something that we absolutely are not. And this was happening back then, but it just wasn't social media. It was just in videos and, on record, all of this stuff. And now image is everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's people look to present themselves as something that'll sell, as opposed to presenting themselves. And this is not everybody, of course, but instead of presenting themselves as who they are and being okay with that and being comfortable with that. And a lot of record labels have, given artists the direction to be, what sells. That's why you have a lot of these artists, and not saying that some of them are real, some of them are real thugs, some of them are real gangsters, and that becomes another issue that, I can discuss at another date. But some of them are real real thugs, and, really do the stuff that they talk about on record. Some of them are real, and unfortunately the realest ones are the ones that are being so detrimental, in my opinion. So compensation for your due payments are overspent, where image is everything and your thirst no longer matters, where we can't stand our true selves, so mirror images shatter, where life's no longer a blessing but a curse, where hip-hop music is no longer fun but work. So where life's no longer a blessing but a curse. In the time that, this was happening, gangster rap was really taking a hold on everything. And, as much as I enjoyed gangster rap, because I was old enough to differentiate between entertainment and, real shit, and not being influenced by that, it still was creating an atmosphere around music that, again, was detrimental to our society. This was after Biggie and Pop, but, there was still a lot of darkness in hip hop, and people looked more towards the dark than the light. It was like people looked at life as something that was detrimental. They looked at life like they were almost, even, I always hated the title of Biggie's first album, Ready to Die. It just seemed so void of any hope. You know what I mean? And, listening to the record and hearing his story, I understand it, but, just the idea of it was something that really carried itself through hip hop during that time. And, in some ways in mainstream hip hop still continues to carry through today. So, where hip hop music is no longer fun but work, self-explanatory. Where life becomes a dream and reality doesn't exist, and surrealism is the poison that you clutch in each fist. So this first verse is, the dark side, of hip hop. This is where, I believe that hip hop, needed to change. This is where I believe that hip hop was kind of killing itself, and it was disappointing and disheartening, but at the same time, I felt that I needed to say it. So in the hook, we have the hook, the stench of burning sentences reeks of lost life, locked in this cage of clones by request. So locked in this cage of clones by request, just saying, that, I chose hip hop. I chose this thing where, at the time I was doing this, I felt it was oversaturated. God, look at hip hop now. You know what I'm saying? But locked in this cage of clones by request, clutching cash overshadows the love of clutching the mic. Your mind and spirit elopes as you continue to stroke your flesh. You become a hollow shell through which the ocean can be heard. But that sound is only an illusion of your depth. Is it by choice that you walk through life as a waste of words, or is a rebirth in store for the piece of your soul that's left? I love that hook. That's a good hook. All right, so second verse goes a little something like this. Get this music out the way. Second verse goes a little something like this. The glass that sits on this table is half empty. With a laugh, I notice the pessimism within me, lost looking for the love that once embraced my muse, amused by the spectacle that my reflections become. No longer enthused by the culture that I held in my grasp. At one time I held the mic, my grip replaced it with cash. I recall my first encounter with the realm of skill, where the concern was keeping it ill before keeping it real, where MCs would roll 6 hours just to bust, where the crowd response is payment, getting cash was a plus, where we concentrate on rhymes to make the fans contemplate, where battles are dinner settings for your heroes to be ate, where lifelong friends are made and your crews are born, where pens act as umbrellas to shield you from the storm, where words are counselors and writing is therapy, where chopped loops and drum breaks the arms that carry me, where we spit till our throat hurts and saliva droughts, where you yearn to hear your verse sprout from one of your fans' mouths, where I want to return, but damn, I never left. I was lost in the page, just immersed in my song concept. So the second verse. So let's dive into the second verse, because I really like the second verse and how it is the antithesis of the first. So the glass that sits on this table is half empty. With a laugh, I notice the pessimism within me. That's just, kind of still riding off of the first verse. Just understanding that, damn, I kind of, am looking at this in a completely negative light and not really myself, giving myself a chance, to see the light, as hip hop and as an MC. With a laugh, I noticed the pessimism within me, lost looking for the love that once embraced my muse, amused by the spectacle that my reflections become. So, that's where as hip hop, I'm looking at myself and like, I'm a joke. You know what I'm saying? Like looking at myself in the mirror, I'm a joke. As hip hop, I'm looking at myself and it's like, this isn't, what I was supposed to be. No longer enthused by the culture that I held in my grasp. At one time I held the mic, my grip replaced it with cash. I recall my first encounter with the realm of skill, where the concern was keeping it ill before keeping it real. So, this is where I start to get into what, I believe hip hop should be. And this is when I start to get into what I believe hip hop has devolved from. So I'm kind of telling this story and, telling you where I think hip hop has come from and where it's, and the first verse is where it's gone. And it's like, now I'm kind of reminiscing about, damn, hip hop used to be fun. It used to be like this. So, my grip replaced it with cash. I recall my first encounter with the realm of skill, where the concern was keeping it ill before keeping it real, where MCs would roll 6 hours, and I just use 6 hours just as an extended period of time, just, as driving. I mean, I've driven for tour personally, like across country, like from Columbus to California, literally, driving, mad days in a car with my dudes. But a lot of that, it was for money, yes, but it was for the love. Like nobody, no matter how much money, unless it's thousands of dollars, and that's not what we were making back then. Not a lot of people, for something that they don't love, will get in the car and drive for 3 days. Like you just don't do that if, it's a hobby. You know what I'm saying? So MCs would roll 6 hours just to bust, where the crowd responses, payment, getting cash was a plus. Where we concentrate on rhymes to make the fans contemplate, where battles are dinner settings for your heroes to be ate, where lifelong friends are made and your crews are born. This is where most of the friends that I have to this day, I've met because of hip hop. Most of the friends that I have to this day, I've met while on tour, while doing music together, Aesop Slug, all of those guys, Idea, God rest his soul, a lot of Merce, like a lot of these people that I've met on my journey, I'm still cool with to this day. I can still kind of hit them up, and like hip hop gave me a lot of my friendship circle, and I'm forever grateful of that. Where battles are dinner settings for your heroes to be ate, where lifelong friends are made and your crews are born, where pens act as umbrellas to shield you from the storm, where words are counselors and writing is therapy, where chopped loops and drum breaks the arms that carry me, where we spit till our throat hurts and saliva droughts, where you yearn to hear your verse sprout from one of your fans' mouths, where I want to return, but damn, I never left. I was lost in the page, just immersed in my song concept. So this whole thing, again, is like me kind of, as hip hop, looking back on, the good things, looking at the silver lining, looking at the light, per se. And, the ending is kind of my, who I'm talking about, y'all, is hip hop kind of moment. Because no matter what, if you look at both verses, the good and the bad, hip hop is all of those things. You can't have the good without the bad. as a hip hop artist, I've discovered that things aren't always going to go perfect in your career. You're not always going to put out the dopest album. You're not always going to write the dopest rap. You're not always going to make the dopest beat. Like there's the ups and downs of life, just like there's the ups and downs of anything. And with hip hop, there's a yin and the yang. You know what I'm saying? There's good and bad, and you have to take the good with the bad. And without the bad, the good doesn't shine as much. So that's kind of why it's like, where I want to return, but damn, I never left. I never left these good things because I still get to experience them as hip hop. Hip hop is still all of those things, but hip hop also is all the things in the first verse as well. And because it is, that's why, we have this relationship with it. No relationship is perfect. The love that you have for your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or the love that you have for that person, or your mom or your brother, like, it's never perfect. It's never going to not have its lulls. You know what I'm saying? It's never going to not have its issues. But as long as you always keep in mind that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, then you can't go wrong. You have to understand that the bad times strengthen you for the good times, so you can enjoy the good times. The bad times don't necessarily make you weak. If you embrace them and you understand them and you learn from them, then they help you grow and they help you really appreciate the good. So this whole song is kind of talking about the yin and the yang of hip hop, and honestly why we love it. You know what I'm saying? Because if we didn't have all the stuff in the first verse, what would we have to complain about? You know what I'm saying? What would we have to debate? What would we have to, it's a beautiful thing. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop is a beautiful thing in all of its genres and all of its glory and all of its, different sects that have been created. It's a beautiful thing, man. So that's it. That's Hollow Shell, man. This is definitely one of my faves on the album. I say that about every song. But the songs on this album are really personal to me and really expressed, really captured a place in the 2000s where a lot of us underground artists were in our minds and what we thought about hip hop. And, a lot of us dealt with a lot of personal issues. And we express those things on record. So this is kind of my flag planting record to really give people an idea of who Illogic was. And I'm really excited about it coming out. And all of you guys that, if you haven't ordered the vinyl, there's still some left. Hit up illogic.bandcamp.com. We got multiple packages. You get a vintage poster, like the original poster that we put out when we got the record that was hanging in stores when the album came out. Like, I reprinted those. Like, it's not like the original, but it's the actual poster, the real poster. It wasn't redone. It's the actual file from 2004. So reprinted those, so you get the vintage poster. A lot of people have been asking me to sign them, so I'm going to do my best to just sign all of them that I ship out. So, you get that. And also it has the song Say the Word on it, which was a song that was in limited rotation on a release of the project when we sent them out to retail initially, when we got a deal. So yeah, man, I appreciate all of y'all for being around. What up, M Still? Fat Matt Jones, what up? I appreciate you. Chad, I appreciate you. Matt, I appreciate you. And anybody else that joined the chat that didn't, that didn't say anything, in the chat, but as watching the stream, I truly appreciate you guys supporting me. And the next song that we are gonna dive into is Lesson in Love. This is gonna be probably a short episode because it's a shorter song, and everything is kind of self-explanatory, but I'll tell the story of everything and how that joint developed. So next week we dive into Lesson in Love. The week after that I'm going to be doing taking another break and doing an interview for the 5 spot. It'll be with my man Cryptic One, which is from Adam's Fam, dope producer, friend of mine for over 20 years, and we get into talking about sampling and all of that. So my man Cryptic One, 2 weeks from now, on the 5 spot. But next week we're gonna dive into Lesson in Love and, you know, have some fun with it. So again, I appreciate y'all checking me out, and thank y'all so much for being parts of the Beats and B-Sides family. You know, I greatly appreciate it. Again, Celestial Clockwork vinyl. If you ain't got it, get it. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. Thanks for watching. Peace. Appreciate it.